Do you also have a Croatian fighter, Mirko Cro Cop Filipovic, associated with a deadly left high kick in the head? How could a heavyweight gauge hone this speed of impact? Not to mention the explosive power of the trademark Croatian head kick, by which he knocked out many of his opponents and became one of the records for the number of one-shot knockouts. Today, let's talk about the brilliant career of the Croatian left-hander in the organization Pride and recall all of his 18 bright victories in the most prestigious promotion of the time. As a child, Mirko's idol was Bruce Lee. He got into kickboxing and first practiced blows at home, where he used to have to repair walls. Home training was not in vain, and Filipovic stuffed in an amateur career kickboxing 40 wins, 31 of which were early. The Croatian knockout then served in the police, for which he subsequently received the nickname Cro Cop, a shortcut from Croatian cop. Mirko loved to fight, and at the age of 22, began a professional career as a fighter. From 1996 to 2003, Filipovic successfully competed in the organization kickboxing K1. His record as a professional kickboxer is 22-7, although in those years, Cro Cop did not become the champion of this organization. He won the huge respect of fans for his courage and will to win. Among those losers were famous fighters Mark Hunt, Jerome Labanner, and Remy Bonjasky. In addition, Filipovic indicted his first defeat of Bob, the Beast Sapp, breaking a 155-kilogram American eye socket with a left cross back in the first round. And looking ahead, Mirko Cro Cop returned to K1 in 2012, and at the age of 38, became the winner of the K1 World Grand Prix, winning 3 fights in one evening. Back in time again, with such a cool background in 2001, Filipovic joined the Japanese mixed martial arts organization Pride. This was a new challenge for the Croat, and there were higher fees. A little later, he also resigned from the police to devote himself fully to MMA. The result of the first 2 fights in the organization was a draw. According to the rules of the Pride, if the fight doesn't end early, then it's awarded a draw. His rivals were Nobuhiko Takada and Vanderlei Silva. In the next fight, in August 2002, Mirko Cro Cop met with the Japanese fighter Kazushi Sakuraba. He was the favorite to the public, who called him the Gracie Hunter, for his series of 4 victories against various members of the great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Gracie clan. From the link that appears on the screen now, you can see this interesting confrontation between the Gracie clan and the Japanese wrestler Sakuraba, which I told you earlier on the channel. Kazushi went after 2 early defeats to Brazilian Vanderlei Silva, and before that, he lost only once out of 13 fights. At the beginning of the first round, Mirko defended himself well from the footsteps. The Japanese missed the right hook and tried again to make a passage to the legs, but unsuccessfully. Cro Cop dropped Sakuraba with a left cross and later a series of dense low kicks from the Croat. Kazushi dodged the lightning high kick with his front foot. Sakuraba held a successful takedown and the Croat closed the guard. Miro blocked all attempts of the Japanese ground and pound. But there were several significant blows, especially the double hammer with 2 hands at once. At the end of the round, Filipovic managed to climb up the stance, but the gong sounded. Nothing happened in the first minute of the second round, and then Mirko shot his signature head kick just past. After a low kick from Cro Cop, Sakuraba took a leg and managed to knock down the opponent with a light overhand. The Japanese wanted to take a takedown, but Filipovic pushed the enemy away and put some hard left hooks into his jaw from the position on his back. Mirko punched a pair of up kicks and almost got to stand up, but the Japanese again held a productive takeout. Until the end of the round, Kazushi controlled the parterre, but didn't deal any damage to the Croat. After the gong, it became apparent that Sakuraba had swollen his right eye very hard, and after a lengthy medical examination, the fight was stopped. Mirko Cro Cop won his first win in the Pride promotion by stopping by a doctor's decision. As it turned out later, Filipovic broke the orbital bone of the Japanese eye. The next opponent of Cro Cop, under the banner Pride, became the American fighter Heath Herring, nicknamed the Texas Crazy Horse. He wore colorful hair with striped patterns and went into the ring in a cowboy hat. In the last battle, he lost to Fedor Emelianenko and wanted to go back on the winning path. After the gong, Herring became the first number, but Mirko met and counterattacked with technical skill. The American was on the ground several times, but Filipovic didn't want to fight, inviting the opponent to the stance. Good low kick from the American, high kick from the Croat block. After an unsuccessful run at Herring's feet, Mirko clutched his head and applied several stiff knees to his head. Heath made a sweep and went up to the stance and ran into a thick left Croat cross. Immediately, a strong middle kick into the corpse of the American. It's clear that he's in pain and he twists. Cro Cop runs to finish off an American. In the 4th minute, the referee stopped this beating. A very dominant performance from Mirko. Heath Herring, after this match, went on a series of 4 consecutive wins in the Pride. In August 2003, Mirko Cro Cop went into the ring against Ukrainian fighter Igor Vovchenchin. The Ukrainian kickboxer, nicknamed Ice Cold, recently alternated victories with defeats, and not so long ago went on a series of 39 consecutive victories. After the gong, Vovchenchin began to tear apart the jabs, and Mirko missed a high kick. The Ukrainian invested in hooks, but Filipovic technically dodged. Good high kick from Igor, but a little later, Cro Cop answers the bad high kick in Vovchenchin's head. Bad for the Ukrainian. Ice Cold fell, and he didn't have to be beaten. It was a deft knockout head kick in the 2nd minute of the 1st round, in the 3rd victory in the Pride on account of Mirko Cro Cop. 2 months later, Filipovic again entered the Pride, Bushido 1 ring. This time, his opponent was the Mexican wrestler Alberto Rodriguez. He had many nicknames, but in this fight, he came under the name Dos Caras Jr., and he had a black and white mask on his face. He won 3 gold medals at the Pan American Greco-Roman Wrestling Games, but in MMA, the Mexican was not as experienced as Mirko's previous rivals, and his victories alternated with defeats throughout one. After the gong, Cro Cop immediately took the center of the ring. The first started, Dos Caras Jr. trying to fight. Horvath defended himself, and Alberto threw the low kick. The accentuated left cross from Mirko, but the Mexican dodged. Cro Cop clamps Rodriguez in the corner and applies his trademark head kick. At least the blow passed briefly on the top of the head, but it was enough to extinguish the light of the Mexican, and the finishing uppercut put a fat point on his opposition. This fight lasted only 46 seconds. Dos Caras Jr. He made another appearance at the Pride and lost, and then went on to 6 consecutive wins in small promotions. For the next victory, Mirko Cro Cop came out against the American Ron Waterman, nicknamed H2O. Of the 13 fights in his career, he only lost once, and that was almost 5 years ago. Waterman was the first and only WEC heavyweight champion. Let's see how the Croat-American standoff ended. The round began with a tricky takedown from an American fighter. Filipovic closed his guard and tried to knit his opponent's hands. Ron was always pressing his forearm against Mirko's Adam's apple, and Mirko was punching him in the face from below. After 4 minutes of control in the parterre, you could hear Waterman breathing heavily. Cro Cop took advantage of the moment. Ron loosened control and rose to the stance. Immediately, casually catches an American head kick and adds a left cross. H2O falls, and Mirko beats him with several brutal soccer kicks in the head. After 5 minutes, the referee stops the fight. 1 fight later, Waterman defeated Kevin Randleman with a sabbatical, and 4 years later, ended his career with a record of 16-6-2. 2 weeks later, Cro Cop again entered the Pride Bushido 2 ring against Japanese fighter Yoshihisa Yamamoto. He was an experienced fighter, but he had a negative record in MMA, 14-16. Nothing surprising happened in this fight, and it didn't even last 3 minutes. The round started with a hard middle kick from Filipovic. Yamamoto then skipped a tight low kick and patted his leg to show he wasn't in pain. Again, with the middle kick from Mirko, the Japanese took a leg, but got a few left jabs in the head. Then there was a poke in the eye from Cro Cop when Yoshihisa was attacked by a cross. An unfortunate passage in the legs from Yamamoto, and a high kick to the block from the Croat. A Japanese man told Mirko that he couldn't shoot a head kick. Filipovic again defended himself from a pass in his legs and put a whip knee in his head. Yamamoto again showed that there was a poke in the eye, which angered Cro Cop. Croat hit a powerful low kick, then another, and the Japanese were no longer laughing. Yoshihisa grabbed his leg and tried to take a takedown, but he was on the bottom. Mirko threw a couple of blows and got up, and Yamamoto also began to climb, but forgot all the protection. The Japanese missed some very violent soccer kicks, but somehow got to his feet. It was clear that he was shocked, and already at the counter, Cro Cop finished the job. With a series of powerful and precise left uppercuts, cross, and hook, he sent Yoshihisa to bed. Yamamoto never won again in his career. He lost all 8 further fights and hung up the gloves. In May 2004, Filipovic played in the next Pride Bushido 3 tournament. His opponent was the local fighter, Hiromitsu Kanehara. It was the second Japanese match in the Pride organization. In the first, he drove off Vanderlei Silva. His career progressed with varying success, and his record was 15-10-1. Kanehara was lower and lighter than Croat, but this didn't prevent him from conducting a full fight before the judge's decision. In the first seconds, Cro Cop hit Hiromitsu with the opposite right cross. He was more successful than Mirko at the stance, but Kanehara also scored a tight right cross. Filipovic pressed and threw kicks and punches on different floors. The Japanese couldn't get the legs, only picked up knees to the head of the Croat, and then a scary soccer kick. Almost all the punches Cro Cop hands in the stance flew to visit Hiromitsu. A significant combination of and left jab from the Croat. Mirko threw the Japanese man to the ground with a clinch and almost blew off his head with a soccer kick, but missed. Complete domination in the stance from Filipovic in the first round. The Croat was far ahead of the big shots. It should be noted that Kanehara is well equipped to hold the blows. At the end of the round, Cro Cop took a bump and sat in a full guard to the Japanese. There was an attempt to hold a painful Americana, but Hiromitsu didn't let it. The Japanese were already very tired from the damage he had done, which was evident, as he didn't want to get up when Mirko invited him to fight in the stance. The second round followed a similar pattern. Filipovic puts a stiff knee to the head with a tie clinch, knees to the head on the ground, hand triangle strangulation attempt, stiff middle kick, left hook to meet. From Kanehara, a couple of significant middle kicks for the whole round. Mirko Cro Cop wins by unanimous decision. The advantage was, of course, rapid, but it's necessary to pay tribute. The advantage was, of course, rapid, but it's necessary to pay tribute to the Japanese fighter for his iron will. Hiromitsu Kanehara won the next 12 fights only once. In less than 2 months, Mirko Cro Cop wanted another victory in his piggy bank. At the Pride Bushido 4 tournament, Japanese fighter Shungo Oyama fought against him. His professional career in MMA was not very good. Of the 7 fights, Oyama won only 2 victories, and his new Croatian rival was exactly a fighter of a different class. From the first seconds of the gong, the Japanese felt all the charm of Filipovic's powerful low kicks. The Croatian brand head kick flew past and the fighters exchanged power jabs. A beautiful but not accented hook kick from Shungo, a powerful combination of jab and left cross, and a series of hard hooks from Mirko. The Japanese tries to defend himself with a clinch and gets 2 strong uppercuts one by one. Oyama goes to the ground and the referee stops the fight. Exactly a minute it took Cro Cop to get another victory in the strongest promotion of that time. Shungo Oyama ended his career in 2014 with a negative record of 14-19. A month later, in August 2004, Mirko Cro Cop again went into the ring of the Pride. Russian fighter Alexander Emelianenko fought against him. He was the brother of the organization's heavyweight champion, Fedor Emelianenko. He then defended his title against Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira in the main action of the evening. Alexander played professionally for less than a year, spent only 3 fights, and was an undefeated fighter. After the gong, Emelianenko became left-handed and began pressing, threw a few left hooks, missed the middle kick, and held another series of hooks, but didn't hit. A pair of low kicks and a thick knee of clinch from Mirko. Alexander actively pressed and attacked with huge hooks. The Russian managed to get a knee to the head from the clinch and then still right hook. Filipovic also hit the left hook and erupted a quick and effective attack with tight hooks. and then threw the Russian on the ring floor and threw soccer kicks in the head. He undoubtedly shook Alexander a little, but didn't want to fight and invited Emelianenko to stand for the stance. The Russian became in his native left stance, defended against the middle kick, hit by a knee from a tie clinch, and hit with the left hook. And then, Cro Cop suddenly shoots his trademark head kick and knocks Alexander down. A few hammerheads and the referee stops the fight. Alexander Emelianenko, like his brother Fedor, did not finish his career, but his last two battles ended in defeats. The next opponent for Mirko Cro Cop in October of the same year was the American Josh Barnett, nicknamed the War Master. He was the UFC and Pancrase heavyweight champion and went on a series of 8 consecutive wins. He had a cool professional record in MMA, 18-1. This fight didn't last a minute. What happened? After the gong, Barnett immediately charged with his hooks and threw his knee out of the clinch. Filipovic responded quickly with a high kick, but missed and fell into the ring. Josh was in the full guard of the Croat, who took 2 hands of an American. The War Master tried to break out of the grip and injured his shoulder. He started knocking, but the referee didn't immediately stop the fight, and Cro Cop threw a few more blows at the defenseless Barnett. An unfortunate loss for the American, and Mirko recorded another victory in the professional MMA record. On the last day of 2004, Mirko Cro Cop faced American fighter Kevin Randleman, nicknamed the Monster. Their first fight was 8 months ago, and Mirko lost a hard knockout. Kevin hit the left hook then and finished off the Croat with heavy blows to his forearms. Randleman fought only 2 fights during this time, and both lost to Fedor Emelianenko and Ron Waterman. Filipovic had 4 fights and 1 in all. This fight didn't last a minute. See, after the gong, Randleman rushed forward and tried to take the takedown. He got to his feet, but Mirko defended himself against the passage and took hold of his neck. Not long thinking, he holds a standing guillotine and Kevin knocks back. For 41 seconds, Cro Cop wins the rematch against the Monster with a sabbatical. After that, Kevin fought 8 fights in his career and won only 2. Less than 2 months later, Mirko Cro Cop again went into the ring against American wrestler Mark Coleman. The Hammer was a titled fighter. He's the first UFC champion, winner of the UFC 10 and 11 tournaments, and winner of the Pride Grand Prix 2000 tournament. The American went after the defeat of Fedor Emelianenko and wanted to go on the winning path. The round began with Mirko with a left cross, but he passed in passing. Croat defended himself well from the passages in his legs, and a little later he hit a hard left cross in the forehead and shook the American a little. Filipovic pinned his opponent in the corner and threw out 2 scoring left crosses. After Coleman's unsuccessful attempt at a takedown, he struck a middle kick in the abdomen. Low kick and a series of Cro Cop crosses. Mark tried to do a takedown, but almost ran into a powerful soccer kick. Again, the American initiates a fight, but Mirko remains in his stance. He clips Hammer in the corner of the ring, hits first with a powerful left hook, then a strong uppercut to the jaw, and also adds a left hook. Coleman falls, and Cro Cop puts a brutal soccer kick in the head. The referee stopped the fight in the 4th minute. An American veteran had another 6 fights, where he scored 3 victories and ended his professional career in MMA. It's an interesting fact that Coleman is considered a pioneer of the ground and pound style, and wears the joke nickname Godfather GNP. In June 2005, Mirko Cro Cop faced Russian fighter Ibragim Magomedov at the 2005 Pride FC Critical Countdown tournament. The Russian was on a series of 4 consecutive wins and lost in his career only twice in the 15 fights. It was his debut in the organization for Magomedov. The round began with quiet reconnaissance, and a loaded right hook of a Russian was the first to break the silence but passed. Mirko began treating Magomedov's feet with low kicks and almost came across a counter right hook from a Russian. Good middle kick from Croat. Hand-to-hand exchange, low kick from Ibragim, and immediately high kick from Mirko. Magomedov missed a left cross and a left head kick a little later, but remained on his feet and continued to counterattack. Again, a clean left cross from Cro Cop, and a little later, the most powerful middle kick in the liver. Magomedov twists with pain and falls on the ring deck. The referees stopped the fight in 4 minutes. another victory in the box at the Croatian knockout. In October of the same year, Mirko Cro Cop Filipovic had a rematch with Josh Barnett. 2 months ago, the Croat lost by unanimous decision to Fedor Emelianenko in the title fight. It was a spectacular match that was called the best fight of 2005 and the best fight of the decade. This fight I thoroughly analyzed in the video about Fedor Emelianenko. Follow the link that appeared on the screen and be sure to check out this fight. Back to his rematch with Barnett. He hasn't performed since he was treated for his injured shoulder. Mirko fought 4 times and only once lost to Fedor, as I said above. This fight has been decided by the judges. Let's remember what it was like. The first round took Barnett. He worked first, constantly pressed, and tried to shorten the distance. Almost the entire round was held in a stance. There were many swords that the American controlled and put many knees in the hull. The exchange of blows of hands was more productive. Josh hit a few hooks and overhand. Cro Cop threw several kicks. There was a thick middle kick under the arm, but without much damage to the opponent. Mirko was successful in the parterre when he dominated full mountain for a few minutes, but failed to develop ground and pound. The second round was won by Filipovic at the expense of takedown and control in the parterre. In the beginning, there were again swords and knees from Barnett, but Mirko hard hit the left cross. By the end of the round, the Croat had dominated the full mountain. His ground and pound had already become more successful, and he had hit several times. Then I tried to get out of the side control for the Kimura, but Barnett was very defensive. At the beginning of the third round, the fighters collided their heads, and Josh was given a small dissection under the eye. Cro Cop made a cool combination of hard middle kicks and hooks, then another good attack of the hands of a Croat. You can see that he gained activity in the last round. Of course, there were Barnett's favorite swords with knee and shoulder bumps. Josh was breathing harder than his opponent. Mirko also had a good knee in the jaw of an American. Barnett wanted to do a takedown, but he was down. Until the end of the round, Cro Cop controlled the American in the parterre and applied a couple of hammer fists to him. Mirko won by a unanimous decision of the judges, and Josh, after this fight, won 4 fights in a row and went to the 3rd fight against a Croat, but about this later. In 2006, Filipovic entered the race for the title of Pride Grand Prix champion in the open weight category. In the first stage of the tournament in May, he faced Japanese fighter Ikehisa Minova. A month ago, the Japanese defeated 385-pound giant Silva, and Mirko for him now was a baby. Of course, this is a joke, and there was a decent difference in size of the fighters, as Minova generally played in the middleweight. After the gong, Mirko confidently began to attack with his hands. Ikehisa made a passage to the legs, but he himself was from below. The parterre was short, and the fighters rose to the counter. Nice kick and a Japanese flip, a tight left cross from Mirko, and then in the clinch knee and uppercuts. Minova is saved by a walk in the legs, but Cro Cop catches him with a left cross from above and puts about a dozen finishing blows to the head. In the second minute, the referee stopped this beating. Ikehisa Minova lost the next 7 fights only once. 2 months later at the Grand Prix, Mirko faced Japanese fighter Hirohiko Yoshida. He was famous for defeating Mark Hunt, who had recently lost Cro Cop, as well as Tank Abbott and Don Fry. The Japanese went on a series of 3 consecutive wins and wanted a 4th. First hit Yoshida right overhand. Mirko walked forward, throwing solo crosses and low kicks. Hirohiko went to his feet, but it didn't work. Again left cross from Croat, a pair of uppercuts from Japanese. There was an attempt to kill head from Mirko, to which Yoshida smiled and gestured that he had a strong head. A shootout on his hands, where he beat Cro Cop harder, diluting the attacks with low kicks. After a bad high kick, the Japanese were on his back. Mirko jumped into a full guard of Hirohiko, but in the parterre, fighters were not for long. After the 3rd hard low kick, the Japanese fighter began to limp. A good left hook from Yoshida, and in return, another tight low kick. Later, Cro Cop, with an exact uppercut, knocked down the Japanese, but didn't finish, and the referee lifted him to the stance. But after another brutal low kick, Yoshida again fell and didn't rise again. In the 8th minute, Mirko Cro Cop won by a technical knockout. Hidehiko Yoshida had 6 more fights in his career, where he won twice and hung the gloves on the nail. On September 10, 2006, the Pride Grand Prix 2006 final was held on its 32nd birthday. He had 2 fights in the evening, and the first was a rematch with Brazilian fighter Vanderlei Silva. They dated over 4 years ago, and then their fight ended in a tie. Mirko lost by points then, but he was saved by the special conditions that if the fight passes the whole distance, then awarded a draw. At the beginning of the round, there was a shooting with blows of hands, which was more accurate and stronger invested Cro Cop. Silva missed the strong middle kick and left cross from Croat. Vanderlei threw a bunch of hooks, but not one hit. The Brazilian made a pass in the legs, but he himself was at the bottom. Filipovic turned on his ground and pound and put a bunch of short hammers. There was a moment when Vanderlei attempted to reach the arm stance. The fighters got up, and Mirko immediately caught the Brazilian with his left hook. Silva fell into the knockdown, and the Croat jumped into the guard to Vanderlei. There was good ground and pound from Cro Cop, but not enough to finish off. Silva had a strong swim in his right eye, but the doctor allowed the fight to continue. The fight ended in the stance. At first, a few good middle kicks from Croat. Vanderlei threw a lot of blows, but nothing got to the target. At the fattest point of this confrontation was a powerful head kick in the 6th minute of the match, Brazilian in the knockout, and Cro Cop in the final of the Grand Prix. It was the main event of the evening against our familiar Josh Barnett, who that evening defeated Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira with a split decision. The fight began with Barnett's active offensive, several strong middle kicks and a powerful uppercut attack from Mirko. Josh drops a few knees and falls. For a few minutes, Cro Cop controlled the American in the parterre, but didn't do significant damage. The fight continued at the stance, and the Croat made a successful cross and uppercut combination, and then hit the opposite left cross. The fighters clashed in the clinch, and Mirko was hit by several uppercuts to the liver. Barnett fell into the ring in pain, and Filipovic turned on the power of the ground and pound. The American took a lot of hammer fists and other punches, and in the 8th minute, Barnett breaks and gives up. Cro Cop wins the Pride Grand Prix 2006. This victory was the only one in Filipovic's career that brought him a widely recognized championship belt in the MMA. And that was the last fight in the Pride organization for a Croatian knockout. Mirko treated a foot injury, and the organization ceased to exist in March 2007. Like this, in the 2000s, at the Pride Fighting Championships, a Croat with a stone face possessed a combination of speed, strength, and aggression, which combined with his almost invulnerable defenses against takedowns, made him the most dangerous sports striker and one of its biggest stars. If you watch this video without a subscription, sign up for the channel right now. Put the like and press the bell to avoid missing the next video.